This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey, listeners, whether you love true crime or comedies, celebrity interviews, news, or even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? And guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance. Then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. It's easy to start a quote. You'll be able to choose the best option for you. It's fast. Now that's something you'll want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote, and you'll be able to choose the best option for you. It is just one of many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at Progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself and join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Wyndham Hotels and Resorts makes travel possible for all. Whether it's the long haulers looking for a great cup of coffee, a roomier rest for the on-a-whim road trippers, or a place to make summer memories with the whole family. No matter who you are, where you're going, or why, with 24 trusted brands to choose from like La Quinta, Days Inn, and Super 8, your Wyndham is waiting. Get the lowest price at WyndhamHotels.com. Restrictions apply. Visit website for more details.
When I called up Lee Kovarsky, who teaches law at the University of Texas, I was looking for a translator. I'd been seeing one headline after another about the classified documents case against Donald Trump in Florida. You remember the one. Special prosecutor Jack Smith is accusing Trump of storing boxes of classified information at Mar-a-Lago. It's being heard by a Trump judge, Aileen Cannon. Anyway, if you read the headlines, this case does not seem to be going very well. And Lee, over the last few months, he has become an accidental expert on it.
I'm also, unfortunately, a little bit too online. So even if I wasn't actively seeking the headlines, they'd be tweeted into my feed. I wouldn't be able to avoid them.
I feel like these headlines, they're funny to me because they sound like Page 6 headlines. Slate had one that was like, Jack Smith has had enough. Politico had one that was like, tensions flare between special counsel Jack Smith and Judge Aileen Cannon. It sounds like, I don't know, we're talking about the Kardashians here.
Yeah, I was going to say like the Jerry Springer show, but I didn't want to date myself. Like someone doesn't know who the baby's parents are and they're like throwing chairs at each other on a stage.
These are lawyers, of course. So in reality, no one's throwing chairs at each other. Most of the time, the judge and the lawyers here aren't even sitting face to face. Instead, they are arguing through exhaustive paragraphs and late-night filings. Judge Cannon has called motions from Jack Smith unprecedented and unjust. Smith has openly worried Judge Cannon's understanding of the case could be based on a, quote, fundamentally flawed legal premise that would distort the trial.
I mean, it was funny to readership who was following along. Someone on Twitter referred to it as Jack Smith's sass, but that certainly ticked off Judge Cannon.
This kind of fighting is familiar to Lee. His expertise is based weirdly on his history as a death penalty litigator. That job means working in federal court, filing all sorts of appeals.
I've spent a lot of time litigating in front of judges that are somewhere between skeptical and hostile to my work, my clients, and me personally. So you can see some parallels what's going on with Jack Smith and the case in Florida.
These filings, are they how you want to speak to a judge or how you want a judge to speak to you?
Of course not. I'm sure Jack Smith isn't enjoying this. I don't think Judge Cannon is enjoying this. Clearly, it's a tone that Donald Trump typically takes towards judges, but no, it's not normal, and I don't think it's comfortable for those two.
Today on the show, inside the very technical, very legal catfights that are throwing the special counsel's case against Donald Trump in Florida into chaos. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Wondery. With the launch of ChatGPT, Sam Altman and OpenAI reinvigorated our imaginations and fears of a world with artificial intelligence. While the company looked like a stunning success from the outside, a battle was brewing within on what the future of AI should be. Almost a year after launching ChatGPT, that battle erupted into a war when the company fired its charismatic CEO, Sam Altman. From Wondery, Business Wars is a podcast about the biggest corporate rivalries of all time. In the newest season, host David Brown digs into the philosophical differences within OpenAI that culminated in Sam Altman's shocking firing, the chaos that followed, and what it means for the future of safety of AI in the modern world. Follow Business Wars on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus. And for more deep dive and daily business content, listen on Wondery, the destination for business podcasts. With shows like How I Built This, Business Wars, the best one yet, Business Movers, and many more. Wondery means business.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So, just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
A little background before we get into it here. Judge Aileen Cannon has been involved in this classified documents case since before it was even a case. In 2022, when the National Archives and the Department of Justice were trying to claw back classified material from Donald Trump, everything came to a head that August when the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago.
Huge reaction to that FBI raid at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, where 15 boxes of material were hauled away. The unprecedented search warrant against a former president has both sides of the political aisle up in arms.
This is when Trump's legal team tried to get the government to back off.
Law enforcement is reviewing all the stuff seized from Mar-a-Lago. And the Trump people go in and they try to file a separate lawsuit to try to stop the DOJ from reviewing the stuff that was seized from Mar-a-Lago. And the place they go to file it is the federal judicial district in which Judge Cannon sits. And the case gets assigned to Judge Cannon, and the Trump people are jubilant. Everybody knows that if Trump perceives a judge as being at all out of alignment with him, he just attacks. And he wasn't attacking.
He appointed Cannon.
Right, and he appointed Cannon. It was a big win for them to get that case assigned to her. Why? Because that case was crazy.
Like the ask was crazy.
The ask was crazy. You don't get to go into a separate court and try to ask that court to stop the government from reviewing stuff it seized in a criminal investigation against you. There is an extraordinarily limited set of circumstances in which that sort of request should ever be indulged.
What did she do to try to sort out what had gone on at Mar-a-Lago in a way she thought was fair?
The first thing she did was exercise power over the case at all. The second thing that she did was using that power to appoint the special master. And the reason she appointed the special master was because the Trump people were making various claims of privilege, attorney-client privilege, executive privilege. They were asserting all of these reasons why law enforcement shouldn't be able to look at the documents.
A special master is basically an objective third party, someone not affiliated with either side who would review all these documents. Almost immediately, Cannon's decision to appoint one made everyone, except for Trump's legal team, mad. Federal law enforcement was outraged because it would have stopped their investigation cold. Lawyers were outraged because the legal theories underlying this decision didn't seem to be sound. And so the DOJ appealed.
Jack Smith won an extremely decisive judgment in the 11th Circuit against Judge Cannon and against the Trump people, shutting that whole thing down.
It is kind of outstanding that, the case gets appealed and this conservative circuit basically says, you can't do this. These aren't, it's not like it's being appealed to, I don't know, like a place in New York State or something. This is Southern judges. This is a conservative circuit, right?
Yeah, it's a conservative circuit. And the panel did include Judge William Pryor. He is the most revered conservative on the 11th Circuit, and he's extraordinarily close with Justice Thomas. Indeed, he's like a pretty good predictor in most cases of what Justice Thomas would do. And he joins this unsigned opinion that really claps back at Justice Cannon.
Okay, so then fast forward. Jack Smith, the special counsel here, charges Donald Trump. And my memory is that it was kind of a wild card who the judge would be when this went to trial. How did this get back to Judge Aileen Cannon again?
So the warrant litigation happened there because that's where the search was. Jack Smith felt like he had to file in that judicial district, and given the way divisional assignment works, there was, a non-trivial shot it got assigned to Judge Cannon. More likely that it didn't. But anyways, he lost the lottery. They were stuck with the worst conceivable judge for this litigation.
Judge Cannon's been presiding over this case for 10 months now.
Yeah.
Is that a long time to be in this kind of beginning stage?
I will say that stuff that she's doing is generating very unusual reasons for delay. For example, fights, these ancillary procedural issues that should be easily resolvable that are taking a really long time. There's still a lot of pending motions in front of Judge Cannon that she should have resolved already.
So let's just dig into one of these issues. Let's talk about this argument that the Trump team is making that the Presidential Records Act nullifies Jack Smith's case against Trump, because this is one of these issues that's kind of tying things up. First of all, just explain what the argument here is.
The PRA is a statute they passed after Nixon tried to take a bunch of stuff that belonged to the American people. And so outgoing presidents under the PRA are supposed to give all records in their possession to the National Archives, with the exception of purely personal records. The personal records category is really small. For example, diaries about personal lives, new puppies, disobedient grandchildren. The process of retrieving presidential records with Trump was chaos, because of course it was. And in the process of retrieving the material, the archives figured out that Trump had taken national defense information.
Okay, that does not sound like a puppy.
It is not a puppy. There is no charge for violating the PRA because the PRA is not a criminal statute, and it doesn't have anything to do with retention of national defense information. So the PRA comes in this way. In February 2024, Trump's lawyers make a slightly different argument, which is what exploded last week. So Trump's lawyers make this wild two-step argument. First, that possession of NDI becomes authorized if the president designates a document containing it, literally any document he wants, as a personal record within the meaning of the PRA.
So that's kind of like waving a magic wand and saying all of this is now personal.
Yes, the first part of the argument was that Trump could just declare anything he wanted as a personal record. The second step of the argument is even more ridiculous, which is they say that the very act of physically removing the records from the White House operated as a decision to classify the records as personal. It's just like an esharpating of insipid legal argumentation, except written in like purple crayon.
I sort of get it, though. They're like, that's how we waved the magic wand. We took it to Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, it's just wild, crazy argument. So Trump says it should be dismissed, and he files a motion asking for it to be dismissed. And then second, Cannon issues this wacky order seeking input on PRA instructions for the jury, which of course sends the signal that she's indulging this Escher painting purple crayon argument. So the special counsel responds, clearly pretty annoyed. He files a response to the order saying that the PRA doesn't have anything to do with the case.
Basically, the idea is like, if this argument is true, what would you tell a jury in this case? Like, thought experiment.
Well, that's what Cannon is asking for instructions about. Now, Jack Smith also asked for Judge Cannon to announce her intentions with respect to the PRA instruction before trial.
Basically, like, do you believe this to be true or not?
Right. Are you going to go forward indulging this crazy theory? And the reason he wants her to declare her intentions now is because if she says that she's going to indulge that theory now, he can take it to the 11th Circuit.
He can basically go to her bosses and be like, this is crazy, right, guys? It's crazy.
Right. Yes. As long as it's before the jury is impaneled, before the jury's sworn. But the moment a jury is sworn in a criminal case is a very significant moment, because that's the moment that we say jeopardy attaches for the purposes of like double jeopardy analysis. You can't be tried for the same crime twice. So if Cannon doesn't declare her intentions with respect to the PRA before the jury is sworn, and if she instructs the jury on a PRA defense and the jury acquits on that basis, there's nothing that Jack Smith can do. Trump skates because there's no appeal, because jeopardy has already attached, and you can't try him again after he's been acquitted, even if the acquittal is based on a legal error.
Last week, Judge Cannon shot down Trump's request to dismiss the trial outright based on the Presidential Records Act. But it's still an open question whether she'll consider this argument down the road. So after the break, what is Aileen Cannon's overall goal here? And does Jack Smith have any options? This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 U.S.-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you're driving, cooking, or doing laundry, Progressive knows the podcasts you listen to go best when they're bundled with another activity, much like how their Progressive home and auto policies go best when they're bundled. Having these two policies together makes taking care of your insurance easier and could help you save too. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save nearly $800 on average. That's a whole lot of savings and protection for your favorite podcast listening activities, like going on a road trip, cooking dinner, and even hitting the gym. Yep, your home and your car are even easier to protect when you bundle your insurance together. Find your perfect combo. Get a home and car insurance quote at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $793 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary.
Can we talk about what you think is motivating Judge Cannon here? Like, I can't figure out what the goal is. And I don't know if you, looking at the filings and being a lawyer, feel like you can.
So there's this debate online and in the media generally about, like, is this bias or is it incompetence? And for whatever reason, people treat those as mutually exclusive categories. I actually think it's both, and you can't really understand what's happening unless you attribute her pattern of behavior in part to each of those things.
Why do you think it's both?
Well, so she consistently is making gigantic legal mistakes, but she's always making them in the same direction. She did it with the special master. She's now doing it with the Presidential Records Act. And it's not just an asymmetry in her legal mistakes, it's also a major asymmetry in her rhetorical swipes, which are fast and furious and consistently at the special counsel's office's expense. I don't think she understood this PRA stuff at the outset, but she surely understands now that she's indulging in absurd argument. And she's doing it in a way that seems to suggest that she's trying to evade appellate review before she can facilitate an acquittal in a posture that's not reviewable. And that's very transparent to people who know what they're looking at.
So if you're Jack Smith, the special counsel here, what are your options?
Right. Well, the body language from Cannon is pretty bleak if you're Jack Smith. Surely Jack Smith is considering whether to force a more definitive ruling about the PRA from Cannon so they can force the 11th Circuit to reverse it.
How would he do that?
So the way they would go about doing that would require something called a motion in limine.
Oof. Vocab time.
Yeah, a motion in limine is basically an order asking the judge to bar the introduction of evidence on a particular issue at trial on the ground that it would be unduly prejudicial or confusing or inappropriate for some other reason.
Okay, that makes sense. So he tells the judge, okay, we're going to not have evidence on the Presidential Records Act because that does not apply here, right?
Yeah, a motion to not allow the introduction of evidence on the Presidential Records Act. That's a motion in limine. So Judge Cannon would deny that motion, presumably, and Jack Smith could take the order denying that motion up to the 11th Circuit. Again, I think if he gets that motion up there, he has a decent shot of winning.
But then the case would go right back down to Judge Cannon, right?
Right. And then the wisdom of that option depends on what you think Judge Cannon's likely to do after that, which leads me to my second option. If you're really, really, really skeptical about Judge Cannon and her receptivity to your arguments in these cases, then you're probably thinking about recusal. And that's a Hail Mary. It's unlikely to succeed.
She'd have to recuse herself, right?
Well, they would move for her to recuse herself. She would deny it, and then they would appeal that.
Messy.
It's deeply antagonistic, again, because it basically accuses the judge of bias or appearance of bias, and it often fails. And so people who are sophisticated litigators often don't do that because it so often fails, and all you're left with is an angered and antagonized judge who you've just called biased. But in this case, what's the alternative? If you think Cannon's already exercising all conceivable discretion against you, then maybe an incremental step that runs the risk of even more discretion exercised against you isn't quite as costly as it might be in other circumstances.
Have you ever gotten a judge recused?
Me? No, I've never gotten a judge recused. I've never even made a motion to recuse. It's really unusual to do that.
I wonder if we can envision the future for this case a little bit, and the future for Judge Aileen Cannon. If Donald Trump wins the election in November, or if he loses. Because it seems like those are potentially different futures, but I don't know, maybe not. I guess, first of all, if Donald Trump wins the election, he's president, what happens to this case in Florida, this documents case? And what happens to Judge Cannon?
The case is going to go away one way or another if Trump wins. Either a Justice Department that he will have staffed with extreme loyalists will find a way to dismiss the case, or if worst comes to worst, Trump will pardon himself. What happens to Aileen Cannon? I think it is quite likely that she gets a promotion to at least to the 11th Circuit. It's only rational for Trump to do that. Trump wants to signal to other officials, to other sources of institutional power, that if they are aligned with him, if they are on board with him, if they protect him, then there will be a bounty, there will be a reward. And what better way, what more conspicuous way to send that signal than by promoting Judge Cannon for her part in deferring the criminal prosecution? And so it's hard for me to see a world where she doesn't get some payoff.
If Trump loses the election, what happens then?
If Trump loses the election, I think there's some disagreement about what happens next. I actually think if the case hasn't gone to trial and Trump loses the election, then Jack Smith will start to have an easier time. Why? Because I think this potential payoff, whether consciously or subconsciously, if Trump loses the election, the specter of, her being promoted and celebrated kind of goes away.
Yeah, I have to say, if I'm Judge Cannon, it basically seems like I have every incentive to delay this trial as long as possible, because there's basically no risk to doing that. And there's potentially a very high reward if Donald Trump gets reelected.
Yeah, there's a high reward if Trump gets reelected. And I referred to the downside. I mean, her reputation, her professional reputation, which judges care about, is, I don't want to say in tatters right now, but it's not a great place. And she's going to have some work to do to leave some legacy other than this. Restoring that professional reputation is a lot easier if Trump loses and she allows the prosecution to go forward. So if you're her and, you just wait, the payoff is higher and the downside is lower. So I don't see why you wouldn't do what you can to stall, which sort of explains what's happening.
Wow. Lee Kovarsky, I'm really grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lee Kovarsky is a professor of law at University of Texas. He co-directs the UT Capital Punishment Center. And that is our show. If you're a fan of what we're doing here at What Next, the best way to support our work is to join Slate Plus. Go on over to slate.com/whatnextplus to sign up. What Next is produced by Paige Osborne, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here next time.
When we made our McDonald's Spicy Chicken McNuggets, you were praise hands emoji. Then we ran out, and you were streaming tears emoji. Now they're back, so you can be grinning face with sweat emoji. Order ahead on the McDonald's app.
And get Money Mouth Face emoji with 2 orders of crispy, irresistible 10-piece McNuggets, spicy or classic, for just $6. Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.